Welcome to Every Album in a Row. My name's Trent. I'm joined by Jason. And this is our show where we talk about a band and we go through every album in a row. It's that simple.
That's right. Yeah. And today we have
Motley Crue. We host the Thunder Underground podcast, which you can also find here on our YouTube channel. So just click subscribe. We've got tons of previous podcasts with guys like Gene Simmons of Kiss.
That's right.
If you listen to our podcast, get used to it because you're going to hear me say that 48 times in the next few weeks. Probably.
Yeah, it's not going away.
Right? Well, as far as this show goes, here on YouTube, exclusive, every album in a row, we've done this with Van Halen, Pantera, Megadeth, Metallica, Guns N' Roses, and now here we've got Motley Crue, like I said. So, Motley Crue's got 9 studio albums, and then they've got a slew of other songs as well.
Yes, they sure do.
We don't, to give you some background if you haven't listened, what we do is we just listen to every studio album. We don't do greatest hits albums, obviously, and we don't do live albums. So in Motley Crue's case, when it came to Decade of Decadence, we listened to the studio songs, not the live songs. They've also got an EP, Quaternary, that came out with Corabi during that era. And then they've got the the Supersonic and Demon Relics, which had a few extra songs that weren't on those 2 albums. And then they had a few other, extra tracks on greatest hits and later on in the career. So, before we even get into this, I want to make a statement.
Gotcha.
For myself.
Let's hear it.
Because I know a lot of people that are listening to this, have never heard us in their life maybe, and there's some people that have heard us but don't know us very well. Yeah. But there's going to be people listening to this that know us.
Yes.
And I've garnered a reputation over the years.
You sure have.
As being a guy that people think does not like Vince Neil. And in typical fashion, people hear one thing or read one thing and then run with it. It's like the headline thing on the internet, the syndrome.
Yeah, they just need one statement, one sentence.
You read a
no
headline,
explanation.
Yeah, you been out of shape, you never read the article, right?
Yeah.
Well, here's the article from me.
Okay.
I fucking love Vince Neil. Not, as a live singer. We'll get to that here in a second. But I don't love him personally. Sure, he's beat up women and killed guys from great bands, but that's not here or there. What I'm talking about is I love Vince Neil as a musician, as a studio artist. Mm-hmm. I love everything Motley Crue's ever done. Even the stuff people don't like we'll get to, after he came back. I love most all of that stuff too. But when it comes to the live performance, he's second to none as far as being the worst live vocalist I've ever seen. Well, let me rephrase that. He's second. The guy from Theory of a Dead Man's worse than Vince Neil. But that's what I'm trying to say is I've made countless statements about how horrible it is to see Motley Crue live. And I know there's millions of people out there, obviously, that don't agree with me because Motley Crue as a band is great live. There's 3 guys on stage that are doing their job extremely well. Yep. They put on a great stage show, but there's one guy up there that just ruins the whole thing for me. And I know there's a lot of people out there like you that agree with that as well.
I do. I mean, I don't know. I can only. It didn't used to be like this.
Yeah.
I mean,
once we were able to see him,
when I saw him
into the early '90s before he left, basically.
Yeah, when I saw them in the late '90s, early 2000s,
even maybe then
on their greatest hits tour at Brady Theater, and they were great. They were fucking amazing. Vince was great, but something happened along the way. I don't know what it is. I mean, I guess it's.
Well, people blame a lot of people.
He just sings every other word.
Well, people would always blame he got fat, and I'm like, that's not it. There's tons of guys out there that are overweight and sing their ass off.
Yeah. I mean, it's just
it's like he stopped giving a fuck.
Yeah, I know, and people, and it's like I think it's like people love that band so much they just want to ignore that fact.
Yeah.
Like if...
You're going for the experience, you're drunk or something. Even if you're not, you're hearing all these songs you love.
Exactly. Like if James Hetfield, took a dump vocally, I wouldn't care.
Yeah.
I'd still go see it because I'm a rabid Metallica fan. But
case in point, I saw Guns N' Roses in that period, whenever, who was with him, Bumblefoot, DJ Ashba, and these guys. a couple times, and a lot of people bitched about Axl's performance in that time, and I had no problem with it. And that's probably because that's my favorite band. So yeah, I could see where that come from, but still, you can't argue the fact that Vince Neil is just not good live.
I know.
Nowadays. But hey, that's not the point of what we're doing here. I just wanted to point that out and let people know that I love this guy's music.
Yes, definitely. And the thing is when it's Vince, when you hear Vince Neil's voice like on record, you know it's him.
Yeah, yeah, he's got a great.
Yeah.
I even love his solo albums. I had the first two. I didn't ever buy Tattoos and Tequila, but I like that song. I know it had a bunch of covers on it, but I like all this stuff.
Carved in stone, bitch.
Yeah.
Yep.
Well, getting on to Motley Crue itself, like I said, roughly 10 albums, 126 songs. The first song being 1981, Too Fast for Love, kicked off with Livewire.
Yes.
And in my opinion, this is Motley Crue's best song of all time. It's my favorite song with Vince Neil on vocals. I'll get to what that means later on. But I think it's, you could say, I can say that it's their best song of all time.
I have to agree. These first couple of, I don't mean to jump ahead so soon, but these first two albums, especially this first album, it's so raw and just full of energy and just full of dirt and attitude. And it's almost like they're going in more of like a Judas Priest kind of direction almost. You didn't get a fluffy hair metal vibe until maybe the third record.
Yeah.
Because it was just mean and raw and black leather and, just loud, rude riffs. And, that's all over this album. It's such a great fucking time listening to this record.
It's funny, I wrote down on my notes, extremely raw.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, come on.
And like you said, I didn't even think about that with Priest, but you catch that they're always thrown in that hair band category, 80s metal or whatever, but they didn't sound like that really. They just sounded, like we said, just like this raw, hard rock band. And those first two albums, but especially Too Fast for Love, every single song on it is good.
Yeah, I mean, it was mean and scary, not poofy and lipsticky.
Yeah. Right? But you could just name every single song on it, and then Mick Mars' opening riff on, well, not just Livewire, but Too Fast for Love, the title track. It just that's a riff that's stuck in your head for hours after you hear it.
Exactly.
And then the songs like Public Enemy No. 1 and Toast to the Town,
definitely.
Starry Eyes and Piece of Your Action. It's one of those all killer, no fillers. And
it sure is.
And you can say, when you think about in the huge picture of rock and roll, there's a lot of bands that have two albums that kick off their career that are fantastic. Yeah. But there's also their reason for that word sophomore slump, because a lot of people don't. Mm-hmm. And you think of Pantera or Skid Row or Tesla or Led Zeppelin or bands like that have those two albums. Metallica, they kick off their career that are fantastic fucking albums. Motley Crue's right there with that. And Shout at the Devil's no different. It almost took what you said, that scariness, to another level, obviously, because of that cover, because of the videos, because of the pentagram. Back then in 1983, that's a huge deal.
Yeah, it was.
If you did it now, it'd be like, what the fuck ever, right?
Yeah, back then, and they had it everywhere.
Yeah.
So it was just really...
In the fire. And all
that. It was just controversial, and it worked for him. But, Looks That Kill... Yeah. Helter Skelter was badass. Bastard. Too Young to Fall in Love was badass. It just kept with that raw, nasty, mean fucking vibe.
Yeah. And I love that guy. Too Young to Fall in Love and 10 Seconds to Love. When you hear those titles and think about this era, you think they're going to be something totally different than they are.
Yeah. And
the first three songs on that album are as good as three songs to kick off an album that there's ever been.
Yeah.
With Shout, Looks to Kill, and Bastard. What you just named, Bastard, is one of those unheralded deep cuts that is one of their best songs ever as well. then Red Hot's great. Danger, Knock 'Em Dead Kid. That's just another every single song album that you can't go wrong with.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, you alluded to Theater earlier. In 1985, we got Theater of Pain. And throughout my life, I've built it up in my head that this album was horrible because I used to think, when I was younger, I was like, that's my least favorite Motley Crue album. And it still is that way, probably.
Yeah.
But it's been, I'm talking since I was young that I listened to this thing full through. So I was kind of anxious to see what I thought. And I was happy that my thoughts kind of changed because when I hear it now, it's like, this isn't that bad.
Really?
It's not, the thing is, it's not anywhere as near as good as the two albums before it. The two albums came after it. Mm-hmm. But it's not bad.
Yeah.
It's decent enough.
Well, you had Smoking in the Boys' Room and Home Sweet Home were the singles, the big songs from that record. And, I listened to it, kind of like you said, coming back to it, it still didn't do much for me. It really didn't.
I'm not saying it did anything for me. I'm just saying I don't think it's bad.
See, I still think it's bad.
Okay.
I'll go ahead and be the dick on this one.
All right. Well, yeah, the only
it just wasn't that memorable. I mean,
yeah, it doesn't. Those first two albums, every single song.
Raise Your Hands to Rock was okay. I don't know.
Keep Your Eye on the Money and Tonight We Need a Lover, I think, are good.
Yeah.
And of course, Home Sweet Home is great. I mean, that's literally one of those all-time great power ballads in my opinion.
Oh yeah, it is.
But the problem is the original one on Theater of Pain is a great song, but it's real thin and dated sounding. Mm-hmm. And in that one that they put on Decade of Decadence, where they basically re-recorded it, it sounded huge,
way better,
bigger, thicker, just more badass. And that's the song that was the song on radio from that point forward. You never heard that old version again.
Yeah, oh, never.
And it's even like if you pull this up on Spotify, it's got all the original tracks, but it's got that version planted on there. So it's kind of, they might even replaced it on the physical copies. I don't know. Mm-hmm. I've never checked it, but anyway, I mean, that was 85 and that wasn't horrible, but everybody's got one of those albums, Oh,
yeah.
Well, they have another one we'll get to in a bit, but 87 brought Girls, Girls, Girls.
Yes, it did. And it's kind of a return to form a little bit, in my opinion.
But in something we didn't mention is Motley Crue is one of those bands, kind of like The Cult or something, where every album, the image and the sound changed a little bit, but you still knew who you're listening to.
Yeah, definitely.
So every album that comes out has a theme and something's a little bit different. And Girls, 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 they switched from that, fluffy glam thing you said to the, the biker, let's fucking party and fuck bitches, which is what they always were, but now that's the image.
Yeah, I mean, you had Wild Side and Girls, Girls, Girls. What a way to kick off a record.
Yeah.
Yeah,
arguably two of their most well-known songs, and Wild Side, I put that up there in the probably top 10.
That's right.
And, overall, I think when you look at the album in a whole, it's not as good as those first two. It's not as good as the one that's coming next, but it's still way better in Theater, and it's a good album.
Yeah, it is, definitely.
Something for Nothing, Rodeo, which was that track they added on like the later copy, I think.
Yeah.
And in You're All I Need, I think, is one of their great ballads. That's just one of those deep cuts. And I think that's the one, isn't that the one they made the video for that got banned?
Oh, I have no idea.
Like, I remember seeing it years later. But, we were too young at that point to know, probably because we were 87, we were 10. But I think there was something about, because that song's talking about, like, killing someone, right, that you're in love with. Like,
I have no idea.
If I remember right. But, like, I think there was some kind of video that, at least in 1987, by these days standards, it might not be controversial at all.
Yeah.
Regardless, we'll have to look that up.
Yeah, definitely. That's a new one on me for sure.
Yeah. Well, 1989 brought Dr. Feelgood.
It sure did.
And I know for me, I'm pretty sure for you too, This is where I got introduced as a kid.
Yeah, it really was for me. I mean, and even...
Because we were around 12, 13 at this time.
Actually, I'll go ahead and say I knew of this band. I mean, obviously. But I didn't even really get introduced to them around this time. It was more Decade of Decadence when, but I'm skipping ahead, so we'll go ahead and talk about Dr. Feelgood.
Well, I remember, this is one of those albums where, like, stuff's all over the radio. Like,
Yeah,
not to the extent maybe Hysteria was, but it's close.
Yeah, it had singles, which, the other albums didn't have that many singles, and it was just, it exploded. It was everywhere.
Yeah,
everybody had this record,
Yeah, the two albums that preceded it had, like you mentioned, two big songs on both of them that were on the radio.
Yeah.
And this one, it hit, the title track, Kickstart My Heart, Without You, Same Old Situation, Don't Go Away Mad. I might be forgetting some. Those were all, like, big radio songs.
Yeah.
And this is one of those albums that, for me, I know, like, a huge Motley Crue fan is always going to go to Shout as their favorite, or maybe Too Fast, but to me, this is just like, since this is where I got introduced to it, this is one of those albums I could listen to straight through always.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It's just, as far as production-wise goes, it's so much huger than everything that it preceded it. And we know that's probably because Bob Rock got in there and
that's right.
Took it to another level. It's, overall, it's got more of a party feel to it.
It does. It does.
Even when you think of, like, Girls, Girls, Girls or something, this, like, look at every song that wasn't a single. Like, Slice of Your Pie, Rattlesnake Shake, She Goes Down. All these songs are like, they got like this swagger, this groove, this party vibe, and every single song is like catchy and memorable.
Yeah. There's
like no filler track in this at all.
Yeah, I know. I mean, this was a home run all the way. And this album contains my favorite Motley Crue song with Vince.
Is it Don't Go Away Man?
Yes.
Nice.
That is my absolute favorite song with Vince.
It's probably my second favorite behind Livewire.
That song just grabbed me from the minute, from the first note. I just love that song. I mean, it's one of my favorite songs ever.
To quote Jerry Miller, it's the perfect mid-tempo
groove-laden rocker.
Yeah, groove-laden.
And that's what it is. And, I just backed up what you said. I mean, there's no filler. This thing was all just, it was all deadly all the time. We all had it. We all had it memorized.
Yeah.
Even the Time for Change and She Goes Down and Sticky Sweet. I mean, we all had that shit memorized.
When I was 13 and listening to She Goes Down, I'm like, man, this is like, I want to grow up and be these guys.
Yep. Well, yeah, pretty much.
And
it's like, you mean women will suck your dick? What? Right. I didn't know they did that.
Well, Kickstart My Heart, like, I would like wait for that to come on the radio. And then I got to the point where I pulled out the cassette and recorded it off the radio. And I would listen to that song like 10 times in a row when I was like 13.
Yeah.
Like, that's how much I loved it. Like, there was a point where it was probably my favorite song in the world. And then, like you said, Don't Go Away Mad. I remember I had the cassette for the album, but then I went to I don't know what it was. It was some kind of like company event, like outdoor event with Matt Ballesta, like with his sister where she worked. Like, she had us go along and they were giving out prizes. And this, for some reason, sticks with me. One of the things I won was the Don't Go Away Mad cassette single.
Yes. The single.
Yeah. And it had Time for Change on the flip side, if I remember right.
Okay.
And mentioning Matt Ballesta, this was like one of his favorite songs when we were young, and he would listen to this fucking song so much that it's the only song in the album that I don't want to hear now.
Yeah.
But when I heard it doing this, I'm like, okay, it's been a long enough time, I can listen to it.
Yes. That's awesome.
But one thing we should mention probably before we get like, we're getting kind of deep into this thing.
Yeah.
Is you've got four guys, that are all four recognizable, all four household names when it comes to hard rock. But you've got three guys that are like instantly recognized to people even outside of like big fans of this.
Yeah.
And the person that's unheralded is the reason this band's so fucking great.
Yep.
Is Mick Mars.
That's right.
It's like his guitar tone in like every album like changes, but it's so fucking great every time.
Yeah.
We've talked about this before. He's one of the most underrated guitarists in rock and roll hiry, probably.
Yeah, he is. He's
a
pillar.
Listed, he never gets listed as those,
I know.
Great hard rock guitarists, and we'll get to some more shit in a minute. But
he just had raw balls. #raw balls. That's what it was. And, it's just, And when you talk about just the four of them, we've seen that picture a million times. Mick Mars watching three morons do stupid shit for 30 years. And it's the goddamn truth. It really is.
Right. Yeah. Well, and another thing to mention is, if anyone out there didn't know, that I know he might have said it before, but I know Bob Rock said on Eddie Trunk's podcast when he was on there that whenever they were going in to record the Black Album, Lars told him that he wanted his drums to sound like Tommy Lee's drums on Dr. Feelgood.
Yeah.
And he said, but just don't tell anybody that. So I guess he waited 25 years to tell someone.
Yeah. Yeah, he can do it now.
Yeah.
Why not?
Well, the next album up was Decade of Decadence. And
yes.
This album was half live songs, a few B-sides, a few covers, and a few new songs.
Yeah.
And a lot of times when bands put out albums like that, where it's like a conglomeration of stuff, and it's what it sounds like, is a conglomeration of stuff. And, we didn't listen to those live songs because we're, for this deal.
Yeah.
But I used to listen to them a ton when I was a kid. But anyway, you've got all the studio tracks on this are great.
Yeah,
like we said earlier, it's got that re-recorded version of Home Sweet Home. But then it's got two songs that are arguably in the top 5 of their best songs ever.
Definitely.
With Angela and Primal Scream.
Yeah. I mean, I think Primal Scream is... That's another one up there, Don't Go Away Mad. I mean, that's just... Talk about a fucking home run. I mean, that showed you where they were going. Exactly. I mean, Tommy Lee's drums, his drumming on that song was just... It was just a ball smasher. Like I said earlier, this is when I really stood up and took notice. Because, you were seeing Primal Scream on Headbangers Ball. You were seeing Home Sweet Home, the re-recorded version. And I really took notice. And that's... excuse me. Primal Scream is really what got me. And that's when I went back. And just, I thought, okay, these guys are great. Let me see what's up. And I went back and rediscovered all that stuff,
Yeah. Well, like you said, you kind of saw with Primal Scream where they were going, and it was like, we'll get to the next album here in a second, and there was absolutely not a single ounce of me that wishes that didn't happen, but you could only imagine what the next album with Vince would have been like if it was shit like this.
Yeah, exactly.
And we didn't even tell, I mentioned Angela, but this is just like one of the most perfect feel-good songs in rock history.
Yep.
That most people don't even know.
Yep, it's heavy, but it's catchy and fun at the same time. It's just great.
Just like a love song, but it's just full-on rock.
Exactly. And it was in The Office. Gotta love it.
I was about to say, it was the final or the second final episode of The Office.
Yeah, when Dwight and Angela were getting married.
Yeah. And I remember, I think you saw it first, and I'm you're not going to believe what they played on The Office.
I know. Well, it's somebody that worked on that show had to be a fucking
they're our age.
Motley Crue dork.
Either they're a huge Motley Crue fan, or they're late 30s or up, to even know that. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, that was great.
Yeah. But, talk about the covers Rock and Roll Junkie, Teaser, and Anarchy in UK. All 3 of those are fantastic.
Oh, I know.
And I almost I might catch some shit for this, but I almost like their version of Anarchy in the UK better than Megadeth or anybody.
Yeah.
I don't know. I'm drawing a blank now, but I know several bands. I know several bands redid this. Green Jelly did their, weird cover of it. But then, I know I'm forgetting someone else, but
anyway. I like their version of it better than Megadeth. So I'll give them that much.
Okay, cool.
I mean, I get that. So
yeah,
Sex Pistols probably hate both versions,
right?
But anyways,
the only thing is you could tell they had Vince try to sing a little more, sound a little like that, whereas he should have just sang the whole thing like Vince Neil.
Yeah.
Which he did on part of it, but there were parts in the chorus and stuff where he was having that kind of trying to go for that English punk sound.
Yeah, well, that's going to be hard for Vince Neil.
Right. But all those songs flowed well coming out of Dr. Feelgood.
Yeah.
And pretty much any of those songs sounded like they could have been on that album as well. And they don't sound like they were just leftover tracks they threw on this compilation album. They're all quality enough that they could have been on that album,
Yeah, definitely.
Well, that's whenever, shortly after this is whenever he either left or got fired, whoever side you believe, I guess.
Yep.
And then 1994, sorry.
Whew.
5 years after Dr. Feelgood, the self-titled album came out.
That's right.
With John Corabi on vocals.
Exactly. And hence one of our favorite albums in the history of any fucking recorded fucking thing ever was born.
Yeah, both of us agree on that.
Yes.
Where to start here? I remember, I was a big Motley Crue fan at this point.
Yeah.
And people were all upset, obviously, because the voice of Motley Crue's gone. And I remember when it happened, reading about it in magazines and all that stuff, I was like, man, this sucks, I hope whatever they get's going to be good. And I think I was one of the rare people that knew this guy before Motley Crue, because Lonnie Walters, who I brought up on the Pantera episode.
Yes.
Because he introduced me to Pantera. Well, he also introduced me to the Scream. And, there was a point where he had got all these albums, and I guess he decided, he was moving on to something other than, 80s rock, because he gave me, a stack of albums, of, Spread Eagle and Bo Nasty, and one of which was the Scream, and there was several other ones in there.
Yeah.
But I'm like, man, this is badass. But I never thought at the point when I heard it, I'm like, I love this guy beyond the, infinity of, the ends of the earth like I do now, if that makes sense. But I just thought, this is great stuff. And then when that came out, I remember the first time I heard Hooligan's Holiday on the radio when they debuted it. And I don't know what other people thought when they first heard it, but I just thought it was fucking great. And I guess I was young enough that I was not set in my ways enough that I was pissed off.
You were willing to go on that journey with the crew.
Yeah, basically.
I remember hearing Hooligan's Holiday, and I was just like, wait. Hands out, whoa.
Right.
What's going on here? I mean, it was just like, now this is the fucking crew. And I don't care what anyone says. It's like that guy that put a comment on our Van Halen about, we don't know what the hell we're talking about. Well, eat a dick, go start your own fucking YouTube channel. That's what I think. And this is what I think about John Corabi is, this is the best fucking Motley Crue album. And I mean, it's the best riffs. It's the best, Tommy Lee's best performance on anything ever. I mean, this album I don't even know. I get overwhelmed. I don't even know what to say.
Yeah. Well, it took it to another level of heaviness. Everything was thicker and broader and bigger and badder, even more than Dr. Feelgood was.
Yeah.
And maybe that's because, Corabi was there playing guitar as well.
Yeah.
But I mean, that's not necessarily the case, because you can layer guitars anytime you want in a studio.
I know.
And plus you had, up to this point, Nikki Sixx was the primary writer, and now he had Corabi writing with him.
Yeah.
And so that obviously had something to do with taking this to the level it went to.
Yeah.
And I'm the same way. I think it's their best album, and it's one of my favorite albums of all time. It
never gets old. You never have to skip around. I mean, it is just, Poison Apples, Power to the Music, Smoke the Sky. It's like, goddamn, it's just insane.
Dropping Like Flies, and the solo on that from Mick Mars is badass.
Yeah, I mean, it's just they tapped into something that I don't know. You're just not going to tap into every day.
Right.
They really did, in my opinion.
Yeah, and the Drift Away, which is at the end of this, is like one of the best ballads you'll ever hear.
Yep.
Living in the Know, which was like the bonus track later on.
Love Shines. I mean, even for a, more of a mellow acoustic-y type kind of thing, it was badass with killer fucking drums.
Yeah.
I mean, like I said the other day, I'd like to hear...
Uncle Jack.
Yes, I'd like to hear Tommy Lee's just drum tracks, what's that word? Just alone, standalone, isolated. Yeah. I mean, that would be amazing.
Well, what, because I mean, you're a musician. I'm not, and I know you've explained it before, but so what is it about his drums on this that make him better than everything else he did before?
First off, I'm not a musician. I'm a guy that knows
you
chords on the
you know
guitar.
how to play a guitar, and you've been in a band, and you know drums. You know.
But it was just something about just his decisions on where to go and what to put where, and he's always in this pocket, and there's just this groove, and it's just this attitude that makes you just go fuck. It's not built on speed, and it's not that he's the most talented drummer out there. But just something about, that attitude and just guts. It's like an intangible deal. It really is. And he's always had it. Listen to the drums on the Wild Side. I mean, it's just badass. But it's just something about this one is that he really just, it was just soaking wet, just attitude. And, I just really hope that people out there listening can understand that. Maybe not, but it was just such a joy to listen to.
Yeah.
It really was.
Yeah, another thing you always hear people saying, it's like, I like this album, but I wish they would have changed their name. And
fuck that.
Yeah,
that's bullshit.
It's just, bands don't do that. That's happened in history a few times, but
and it never goes
never
anywhere.
At this level. A band that was
exactly.
at this level. Look, people are going to say you can't compare John Corabi to Sammy Hagar or Brian Johnson, but I'm gonna, not because he's achieved that level of stardom or success, but because it's the same exact thing regardless of whether there was success or not.
Yes.
AC/DC didn't change the name, Van Halen didn't change the name, and they didn't need to.
Yeah.
It's like Motley Crue, sure, most of the songs on here didn't sound like anything they had done previously, but it's still Motley Crue. It's still 3 of the 4 guys.
That's right.
You've got shitloads of bands out there, whether it's right or not, touring with 1 guy left. And 3 out of 4 is pretty good in most of these cases.
Yeah. And Vince Neil wasn't even the goddamn strong point of the band anyways.
Yeah, he had it, like we said, he has a great rock voice, but he didn't. Nikki Sixx wrote these damn songs.
Yeah.
And Mick Mars is the backbone of this fucking thing with his guitar sound. And of course, Tommy Lee, one of the best, rock drummers out there.
That's right.
So, sure, they could have changed the name and maybe had some moderate success, but I don't think it would have done any more than they did with this. And, maybe, we kind of talked about this a little in a podcast we got coming up with Travis from The W Door, and he kind of mentioned that, but he also said it really would have been cool, the same thing we thought, if they would have just rode this out for a bit.
Yeah.
And tried to do another album or 2.
Yeah.
And just see, like we mentioned with Gary Cherone and Van Halen, see where it would have went.
Yeah.
And that would have been great, but at the end of the day, I understand why they did it, because Nikki Sixx is like great and rock star and, cool as he tries to portray himself. At the end of the day, he's the second coming of Gene Simmons, and he's a businessman first and foremost before he is a musician. And he knows when the record label said, we'll get behind you if you get Vince Neil back, that's what we need to do, because that's what people want to hear.
Yep.
And, at the end of the day, that sucks for us because we love John Corabi. But I'm not like in the corner crying like a bitch because I also like Vince Neil.
Yeah.
There you go. And it's like, and the only, not long after that, Corabi started Union with Bruce Kulick.
Yes.
Brent Fitz. And they had a couple great albums. And then after that, he kind of like didn't do a lot. He did stuff here or there, but you didn't hear from him for a long time up until, maybe 10 years after that. And then he started getting back out there in the last 5 or 6 years. He's had a lot of stuff come out. So like as a fan, I'm really fucking glad that he's back out here pumping studio music out, whether it be his solo stuff, Dead Daisies.
Yeah. Well, he did rap for a while. You can't forget about that.
Well, that's true, but there was no recorded shit.
No. No, true. You're right.
Well, before we get to the point of him getting kicked out, they released Quaternary.
Yes.
Which, when you think about it, this is a really cool idea that I wish other bands would do. What they did, is they released an EP with 5 songs, and 4 of them were basically each guy doing their own song how they wanted to do it.
Yeah.
And then the 5th one was just, I think, a leftover track. Baby Kills. It sounds like the 94 album.
Yeah,
it's a fucking great song.
Yeah.
But the 4 songs, you could if you didn't see the name of the song, I mean, or you didn't know whose song it was, you can tell each one which guy wrote this if you know Motley Crue. And the easy standouts are obvious is the fucking Mick Mars song.
Yeah.
The other three, I like the Corabi one, but it's just sounds like he's trying to be the Beatles, and it doesn't sound anywhere near as good as his more recent stuff that he's done after Motley Crue. The Nikki Sixx one is just kind of a fucking weird thing. It's not bad, but it's not great. The Tommy Lee one, of course, we don't even really want to get into that. You can if you want.
No, I'm good.
But that Bittersweet, it's called Bittersweet. The Mick Mars song is just this awesome blues rock guitar thing. And it's just fucking phenomenal.
Yeah, I can't wait for that guy to put out a solo album.
Yeah.
It'll be insane.
That's the other thing to mention if you didn't know, that he's been working on this thing for now over a year. And he brought in Corabi to do at least 2 songs, I think it was.
Yeah. Yep.
So, and I don't know who he's got on vocals for other songs, but if it's anything like Bittersweet or even like his stuff with Motley Crue, it's going to be great.
That's right.
Well, after the Vince Neil came back, 1997, they released Generation Swine. And I know you don't care for this. There's parts of it I don't care for, but I still like it as a whole.
Yeah.
Taking out the shitty parts. But when this came out, I listened to the shit out of it all the time.
Yeah.
Back in 97. And they kind of continued with that harder edge that they had built with Corabi. But with Vince back, not everything was that way. And it wasn't anything like Primal Scream or that direction they might have been going. But I don't think people liked the idea of Vince being back and it still not being Motley Crue. So it still wasn't any more successful than the 94 album.
They tried to do, look, on this song, let's be like this kind of band that's out now.
Yeah, that's a good point.
On this next song, let's be like this kind of band that's out now.
Yeah.
I really think, Afraid was decent, Let Us Pray was good, and then the rest of it, just put in the fucking bargain bin, man. I mean, I can't deal with it. It was painful listening to it.
Well, I really like Find Myself. I really like Let It Pray. Let It Pray, I think, was one of the ones that John Corabi wrote with Nikki Sixx, and I think Find Myself might have been too, but I'm not positive. Yeah. The title track is really cool. It's just this 2-minute long punk sounding thing.
Yeah. There's just a lot of, let's
it's very sporadic.
Yeah,
spastic or whatever.
Let's be punk here, let's be rock here, let's be industrial here. There's no real identity to this record.
So it's almost like they were going for hopefully one of these songs hit.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, Glitter, come on. I'd rather...
Glitter's their second worst song of all time.
I'd rather put a butter knife up my pee hole than listen to that song again.
I know.
I mean, fucking fuck.
But I remember when Afraid was out, back then, listening to the album, I didn't like it. At least
I always dug Afraid, I was like, it's not too bad.
But I mean, listening to it now, I really liked it. And I'm like, what was I thinking? I don't know. But
yeah, I like the little bass intro and stuff. I liked that song.
Confessions is a song that is nothing like Crue, and it's real kind of, I don't even know how to describe it, but for some reason, I fucking love that song.
Yeah.
It's probably my favorite song on the album, which sounds weird as shit, but I love that song. And then at the end of the album is their worst song ever.
Oh, God.
And it's you hate saying that because it's okay, this dude wrote a song about his little kid. But it's just, come on. Put some fucking effort into it,
Yeah.
The song Brandon, written and sung by Tommy Lee. And Tommy Lee is not a bad singer. His solo album that came out later had some good songs.
The song was good.
Yeah.
But Brandon, that song Brandon, just a 2-word review. Shit sandwich.
Shit sandwich. I got something I want to say. I just wonder, do you think now that Brandon is 20-some years old, he looks back and says, what the fuck were you thinking, Dad?
No, because he's like, oh yeah, my dad's Tommy Lee. Who gives a fuck?
That's true. That's a good point.
Just saying.
Well, what were your thoughts on one of the last songs on this was the Shout at the Devil 97, the remake of Shout at the Devil.
I thought they should never have even touched that.
Right.
I mean, what was the fucking point?
It's just they just tried to do a faster, more, it even had that industrial tinges to it.
Yeah, well,
version,
that makes me want to fart. I can't stand it. Fuck it.
I remember they performed it on like Leno or Letterman,
Mm.
but I don't remember if it was good or not on there. But
Next.
right. Well, next up, the next year in '98, they released their first greatest hits album, and it had 2 new songs on it called "Bitter Pill" and "Enslaved."
Yes.
And both these songs are better than everything on Generation Swine.
No kidding.
And
it's like, okay, here we go.
Yeah.
Vince is back. I get it. Yes.
now they're like, okay, let's write Motley Crue songs.
Yes.
Not what we were talking about. We're just trying to...
They were catchy. They were heavy. They kind of had that attitude that, you really liked from early Motley Crue.
Yeah. I think Enslaved is definitely the better song of the two, but Bitter Pill is great. It's got that great that's guitar sound that Mick Mars has, and that's really cool.
Yeah. I think both those songs would have fit good on Dr. Feelgood.
Yeah. Yeah, they're kind of, they have that sound of that era, Dr. Feelgood and the decade stuff. Well, in the very next year in '99, they released Supersonic and Demon Relics. And this was an album that had the songs from Decade of Decadence, the studio songs. It had the songs from Quaternary.
Mm-hmm.
And then it had several other unreleased studio songs. And maybe some new ones, I'm not sure. But that song Monstrous is just a piece of shit. I'm talking like Glitter, Brandon, and then Monstrous. Those are the top 3 words. Yeah, I don't know, man.
I don't even remember that song. That's
it
probably
was
why
so
I
bad
noticed,
it stuck out, to me. But literally every song on this album that is not from Quaternary or Decade of Decadence just aren't good. It's weird.
Yeah.
It's like, okay, now you're putting out the stuff that every other band puts out just to fill a fucking, compilation album. So this is the first time they finally released a bunch of crap that shouldn't have been released. Well, besides Generation Swine, in your opinion, I guess. But.
Yeah.
Well, they're panning it out like it's the 70s or 80s now, because we got 97, 98, 99, and then 2000. 4 years in a row they had products out.
Yep.
2000 was the next new album, the second album with Vince back, which was New Tattoo.
New Tattoo.
And this is the first album to not feature Tommy Lee.
Yes.
Randy Castillo was on drums. So they at least replaced him with someone of equal greatness.
Yes.
Even probably more greatness when you get down to technical ability.
Well,
I don't know. But Tommy Lee's still more of a attitude guy, like you said. This one's tricky. I mean, people just blow this off and don't even... I got it when it came out, just like every other one. I liked it. I still like it, but it's not up there with the great stuff. But overall, they obviously were like, okay, this Generation Swine shit didn't work.
Yeah.
Let's try to go back to our glory days.
Yeah. Well...
And it almost sounds like they're trying to go back to the glory days.
Hell in High Heels is good.
Yeah.
I liked Punched in the Teeth by Love.
Yeah, that's the one that sounds most like the early Motley Crue.
Yeah, I mean, this album had some good moments on it.
Yeah, I like the title track, that ballad "New Tattoo." I mean,
yeah, that's a good one. And
even their cover of White Punks on Dope. It's like it's not the greatest thing that ever was, but it's memorable enough, I think. But I mean, overall, it's a good album, but it's not anything I ever think when I think Motley Crue. Oh shit, I need to go listen to New Tattoo.
Yeah, right? Yeah, true. I agree.
Yeah, but it was a good return to form, and 2000 was probably a good year to do that because the 90s was a weird time where they were trying to.
Yes.
All these other bands were like not succeeding in the mid 90s from that era, outside of one or two, and. So they went for it. And in 2000, they're just like, fuck it, let's go back to what got us here and see if it hits. And it still wasn't really commercially successful, but it probably appeased a lot of fans.
Yes.
And I guess the next new song they came out with was 5 years later. They released this pile of shit version of Home Sweet Home with Chester Bennington on vocals. What's your take on this?
Same thing. Why would you fucking do that?
Yeah.
Just sell some fucking copies of it. Get younger people into you, but...
Yeah, I mean, same thing. That was probably a Nikki thing. Like, hey, let's get Chester on this and make some fucking cash. I don't know.
I hope they did. Good for them.
Well, 3 years later in 2008, Saints of Los Angeles came out.
Yes.
And this is the final full album of music. And easily the best album with Vince since he came back.
Oh, definitely.
And I'd put it above Theater. I'd almost put it above Girls, Girls, Girls as a whole.
I mean, every song on here is memorable. I mean, every song on here, there's just, I don't know. It was the time. I really dug that record. Everything was catchy, and it just, I don't know, it struck me for some reason.
Yeah.
And I don't even remember, I had really given up on the Crue. I don't even really know why I went and bought it. But, I did, and it was way better than I really even expected it to be.
Yeah, I don't remember what the first track is, but one of the first songs is Motherfucker of the Year. That's great.
Yeah.
Then Down at the Whiskey. That's like the best song they did post John Corabi. Without a doubt, in my opinion.
What's It Gonna Take? I thought it was a great song.
Yeah.
Really liked that song. Just the melody, it's just catchy as hell.
Yeah. Then
Saints of Los Angeles title track. Yeah,
the title track's great.
It's good too.
Chick's Equal Trouble was really good. I like that.
That they fucking do.
Yeah.
And they're right.
Nikki knows.
Yes.
He's had some famously troubles.
I like to Going Out Swinging.
Yeah.
It was just a great record. It was really a return to, good songwriting and good performance,
Yeah. So yeah, I'd literally say, what's that? 1, 2, 3, 4. I'd put it as their 5th best album.
Yeah. It is a great record to end on.
Yeah. I mean, I put it right behind the first 2 albums, Dr. Feelgood and Motley Crue 94.
Yeah.
But I don't know if I had this out of order, but I know that second greatest hits album came out either right before or right after Saints of Los Angeles. I think it was 2009.
Okay.
Where they had Sick Love Song and If I Die Tomorrow.
Yeah.
And once again, these are both memorable songs. Sick Love Song's more of the full of attitude Motley Crue that we know and love. If I Die Tomorrow is more of kind of like it's kind of a ballad, but darker.
Yeah.
And I mean, both are good songs, and they kind of return to the sound in the same, before Vince left, in the same way that Bitter Pill and A Slave did.
Yeah.
But also, I guess, in a way that the Saints of Los Angeles did. But I think these 2 songs kind of represent their early sound more than even that album did. But then what? Then the final 2 songs were a few years later. 2013 or 14 was that song Sex, which I don't like that at all.
No, I didn't care for that. The All Bad Things I thought was okay.
Yeah, that was the final song in 2015 that they released in conjunction with the final tour. And I thought that was a really good song. But it's kind of... Sex is forgettable and All Bad Things is good, so that's your ending, basically, of these studio tracks. But anything else to throw in here besides... I mean, we already mentioned Nikki Sixx is an amazing fucking rock and roll songwriter. People don't bring that up because they just bring up all the other shit. He's got a radio show, which is not that good. He's got great fucking books. He's a great fucking photographer. And he writes great fucking music.
Yeah.
Mick Mars is highly underrated. We said that, but sorry to cut you off.
Let me ask you something. Are they really done?
No.
Okay.
I don't believe that at all. But the thing is, they supposedly signed that contract at that press conference, but they always just said, we're not going to tour.
Mm-hmm.
That doesn't mean we can't go do a residency in Las Vegas again.
I still think they'll do that. It might even still be another couple of years away from that, but I think they'll do that again.
I think even more, and maybe they'll space it out a little, give it maybe 5 years.
Yeah.
But that doesn't mean they can't do a show in Los Angeles or New York or Paris, France, for that matter, just as long as they're not on tour.
Yep. Or when they get inducted into Rock and Roll Hall of Fame.
True.
Because if that happens.
It should happen.
Yeah, it should.
Who knows if it will.
It'll probably be another 30 years.
Right.
The way those fuckers work.
But it's the same concept of Black Sabbath. They did this final tour, but they already said before it even ended that it's just the end of touring. That doesn't mean we won't do a show now or then.
Yeah.
And you know that Motley Crue knows there's big money in that, so why not do a residency in Vegas?
True.
Yeah. So, I was going to ask you something else, but anyway. We already mentioned what our favorite song was. What's your favorite Vince album? Because we know Motley Crue 94, the self-titled album, is your favorite album. Does it feel good?
I'll go with Feel Good.
Yeah.
That'll be my vote.
I think I'm Feel Good. If not, maybe Shout at the Devil. It's a close tie. But,
Gotcha.
Yeah. Well, there you go. 126 songs from Motley Crue.
We did it. We knocked another one out.
Yeah. Like we said earlier, Pantera, Van Halen, Guns N' Roses, Metallica, Megadeth. In that last one, that Pantera one, I made the comment that Ugly Kid Joe was going to be next, but we thought we should stick with bigger bands to get people pulled in and then go to those bands later.
That's right.
We're still going to do that because I'm admittedly a fanboy of that band. Whitfield Crane is my top 10 vocalist of all time. But you want to do Kiss next, or is that too big of an undertaking?
Fuck it. Let's do Kiss next.
All right.
We're on it.
We're on it. That'll be tough.
I'm just going to act like I listen to The Elder.
You got to do it. 'Cause I'll ask you questions to make sure you did it.
God damn it.
So I can know.
All right. Okay, well, we'll do it. Fuck it.
Well, mentioning Kiss, like I mentioned at the beginning of this thing, we recently had Gene Simmons on our podcast. It's episode 116. You can listen to it here on YouTube. Or you can go to soundcloud.com/Thunder-Underground. All of them are on there. That made a bunch of news.
Yes,
through
it did.
Blabbermouth and Loudwire and all these other sites.
We're very excited about it.
Yeah, check it out. It's got a lot of... it's a good interview, and regardless of what people say about Gene, he was nice as hell to us and nice to everybody in that trailer. There's probably 10 people in there.
And that's something, these go up and everyone's like, oh, he's a douche, he's an idiot. Guy couldn't have been nicer to us, and the guy absolutely made sure that everybody around him was put first before him.
Yeah, true.
So that tells you something.
Right. Well, we've also had on guys from Drowning Pool, Megadeth, Shinedown, Avatar, Taiketo, Bullet Boys, Warrant, Europe, Trickster, if you're into that kind of stuff, which if you like Motley Crue, you might be.
That's right.
Great White. We've also had on guys from Battlecross, Corrosion of Conformity, Overkill, Death Angel, all kinds of great stuff. We've got ones coming up from Anvil and Local H, as well as, like we mentioned earlier, The Devil Your Door, and a new band out of Tulsa called Ultra Blood. Yes. So be on the lookout for all that. Thunder Underground on SoundCloud, Facebook, YouTube, Twitter. YouTube at The Thunder Underground. Subscribe, follow us, be alerted when this shit comes out. Till next time.
Thunder Underground, y'all.